Ah, for Hello, viewers, listeners, countrymen, countrywomen, come pull up a pew at the altar of gaming as I bid you welcome to episode 6 of Betrayed by Dice.
Welcome.
The tabletop wargaming podcast that never, ever retcons its own lore. My name's Lee Burns, as ever, and I am also, as ever, joined by my co-host, your co-host, everybody's co-host, Daryl T. Stoker. Daryl, it's the end of the weekend here. How are you doing? Have you had a good one?
Yeah, weekend's been pretty chill. I've had a mega busy week. Had some exams this week. Did my advanced life support, a 2-day course with some exams at the end. So a lot of work, a lot of stressing about it because I always do sort of get a bit stressy around exam time. So yeah, I'm glad that that's all done. Passed, did pretty well in the exams and stuff as well. So I'm happy with that.
Congrats.
But yeah. Lots of algorithms floating around my head now.
All right.
Yeah.
Lots of real world stuff going on.
Yeah. You know, drownings and major hemorrhages, things like that. Nice stuff like that. Yeah.
So for anyone not having listened before, you work in the medical world.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
Very good. I was just saying before, I've had an interesting weekend myself. I was at Newcastle Cathedral last night.
Lovely place.
Not praising the god, but praising a god, because we were there to see a David Bowie tribute band, which was, an interesting experience. It was one of the kind of tribute bands where they've really gone... The guy's is doing a David Bowie impersonation at the same time as singing the songs.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it when they just come on and they're really good musicians and they just...
Yeah.
But it was an interesting time. Lots of people enjoying themselves. Lots of people of a certain vintage enjoying themselves very much.
Yeah.
And fair play to them, I guess.
Good. Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about music or the medical world. We're here to talk about gaming. So... yeah, just a quick reminder that if you're listening to this, you can watch us on youtube.com/Northern Realms. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then first of all, stop what you're doing, like, subscribe, dislike, comment again. But that you can also listen by searching for Betrayed by Dice wherever you consume your podcasts. We've got an Instagram at instagram.com/Betrayed by Dice. And we've got an email address, but I'm not even reading it out anymore because nobody emails us.
No.
So yeah, that's not the right format of engagement for this sort of thing. I
feel
think.
Probably not. No.
Okay, cool. So yeah, what are we talking about on today's podcast?
Well, we've got a normal sort of routine, haven't we? We've got our hobbies, progress, and plans that we'll be talking about some bits and bobs in. Recent games that we've played. Both yours and my favourite section, good GW, bad GW.
Yeah, and there's an absolute smorgasbord of things to talk about there this month, isn't there? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Some spice in that one this month, for sure.
Yeah, the spice will flow. Our main topic today is going to be about games from beyond the grave, or dead games, in inverted commas, games that are no longer supported, and the value or folly and keep on playing them. So looking forward to talking about that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then, as always, we will finish on secondary objectives.
Yeah, which is where we talk affectionately about something perhaps not entirely of the tabletop wargaming world or realm, which we've been enjoying or thinking about over the last little while.
Of course, yeah.
All right, sounds fantastic. Let's go diving straight in then to hobby progress and plans.
Yeah.
Do you wanna grab the baton, or shall I go first?
Tell you what, I just did a bit of talking, so why don't you start?
All right.
You tend to do better at me than this, but
you're too kind. Too kind. So yeah, I've been having recently, kind of a a medium pace sort of fun time of painting, you know. There's not been like no wild armies getting knocked out like in, you know, like in like a week's time or something, but there's quite a lot of sort of like individual miniatures and sort of characters and things, and just working on, you know, fairly small scale projects. But yeah,
I feel like there's quite a lot of consistency though.
Yeah. I've been getting to the painting table fairly consistently. So yeah, little and often, that's kind of been the way of things. What I've been painting, or the system that I've been painting mostly for, has been Blackstone Fortress. Really enjoyed a couple of games of that.
Nice.
So this is Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress, the one set in the 40k universe.
Yeah.
We'll get onto that when we're talking about games played. But the painting that I've been doing for that, first of all, has been sort of finishing off all the hostiles, the baddies from the core box. So that was
Is hostiles the nomenclature that they get used in the game? Is that
exactly right? So yeah, they are in the rules. Hostiles. Yeah,
cool.
That's the preferred nomenclature exactly. So some Chaos Beastmen first of all, which is really fun, and I think we've talked a little bit about the Kill Team box. Is it Felgor Ravagers?
Felgor Ravagers.
You've been tempted by?
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I've never painted like space goat people before, but it's just a ridiculous amount of fun, you know.
You did such a good job of them for a reason that we're about to talk about. It's just, oh god, yeah, the aesthetic that you've hit is spot on.
Well, I noticed that they're all wearing shorts. I don't know why goat people in the 41st millennium are wearing shorts. I mean, I don't know.
I reckon they've probably got pretty chunky thighs and calves, haven't they?
Yeah, then what, they would just want to sort of show that off?
Well, they might find pants a bit too tight fitting.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
Get itchy with furry legs? I don't know.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, I obviously hadn't spent quite enough time thinking about this, but in any case, so they've got shorts on. So I thought, let's have some denim shorts on these guys. I had some like light blue paint that I hadn't used before, so yeah. So I've got some denim shorted goat people from the 41st millennium, and then like, you know, they've all got chainswords.
Yeah.
So what is dafter than a chaos goat guy with a chainsword with hazard stripes on the side of it as well, you know, and like they've got to be safe whilst they're doing.
Yeah, of course. Well, so the thing is, like, and whether or not you've got an awareness of this aesthetic, this so there's an era in metal in the late 80s, early 90s, thrash metal hit a really steady pace, and there's a band I really like called Municipal Waste. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Not familiar, no.
But the aesthetic for hardcore and thrash from that era is like just denim, like denim waistcoats, call them battle jackets or battle vests, which is like a denim jacket with loads of like patches and stuff on. I was going to send you some pictures and be like, just paint it like this, please.
Oh, very cool.
And then like denim shorts in the summer and stuff like that.
I sort of feel, you know, like people get slagged off for wearing double denim. I think if anything,
the Canadian tuxedo.
Go further.
Yeah,
like triple denim, quadruple. You know, like as much as
denim
you can
boxers.
Yeah, maybe not that, but I don't know, like what you've got your waistcoat on there, your jacket, you know, sort of 3-piece, you know,
denim socks.
Anyway, but yeah, they were loads of fun to paint.
Yeah, they're great. They look great.
Great minis, really. Sort of, I mean, they're sort of like monopose, and there's actually like just two variations of you know. So of there's 4 guys, goats, but there's 2 variations of it. But even allowing for that, they're still really fun to paint. Elsewhere in the same box, painted up the Rogue Psychers.
Yep.
So these are kind of guys floating off the ground with like big brains, and
they've got the Akira thing going on, haven't they?
There is a bit of that, definitely. And yeah, for something, I don't know if I saw this somewhere or if I even just had the idea myself in my own brain, but I thought I'd like try something different with painting the pale skin that they've got. So did a normal Zenithal black and white first, and then put like a coat of Magos purple, I think it is, which is a very thin contrast paint, and has annoyed me in the past because it has almost zilch opacity. However, for like basically using it as a sort of filter or a wash, quite good. Put that down, and then sort of leaving that in the recesses, put like thin coats of different pale skin tones The idea being that you've got this kind of weird sort of orange, purple kind of glow,
Yeah.
or just sort of like recess shade.
But well, I mean, and if when you look, so I'm a big fan of using like real reference for stuff as well. And when you look at somebody's skin, nobody in the world has like a uniform
flesh tone.
exactly,
Yeah,
or like Bugman's Glow with Acadian flesh tone highlight. There's areas where you've got like blood vessels and stuff on show, and those show up as like a bluey purple. So like I think that little bit of, and it's because it's a warm colour, it still looks alive, but it just looks a little bit sickly or a little bit weird. So yeah, I just think it adds that little bit of visual interest to make it look a bit more alive instead of.
Exactly. I think that's bang on. I think like something that might have like sort of got me thinking along this was seeing, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a few people recently who've been painting sort of Space Marine heads or just faces and putting them out into the world as if they were sort of like painting Rembrandt or something, just like really put some phenomenal work. If we can remember who it is, we'll put some pictures up. But yeah, and I guess it is that thing you're saying of just trying to get a non-pinkish hue, some reds or some purples onto a face to give it that look of being alive, which you sort of like literally brings it to life. So there you go, hobby tip Claxon.
I don't know if you ever saw there's a we've talked about him before in the past, but that Marco Frazzoni, the Not Just Mecha guy, there's an old like realism art technique for painting flesh tones where you paint the subject with blue in the areas that aren't covered with light, red in the in-between areas, and yellow above. And then when you paint, and that's sort of like a basic, almost like underpainting.
Yeah.
And then when you paint over the top of that with the flesh colours, the underpainting lends that warmth or coolness that you would get from areas that aren't in light or would be sort of semi-lit and then are catching highlights. And it's all true art colour theory.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting video to watch actually. So he painted a bust or like a large scale figure and did the whole figure, and it looks really odd at first. It looks like something out of like Art Attack. But this blue, red and yellow figure, but it just turns out unbelievably at the end.
That's really interesting. So yeah, Marco Frazzoni's amazing. I think he's well known for like being a massive advocate of oil paints,
oils and inks. Yeah,
that's kind of his the thing that he's maybe known for most on YouTube. But yeah,
he was the reason I started using oils.
That's really cool. But there is this whole world, and like look, I've just put a little bit of a purple wash on something before I painted the skin's tone, so I'm not like making greater claims than I ought to. But there's this whole world of of art theory, color theory that like we're kind of dancing around a little bit when we paint miniatures. But like when you can really tell people that know that background as well and have got more of a sort of fine art approach to things.
Yeah, I'll always say that I'm no expert, but I think what you do and I do, and everyone that we know sort of in our local group and things, we all watch videos and read articles and things like that, and nobody ever takes all of it in, you know what I mean? But you just sort of skim off the top 5% and then a little bit, or you might try something and you don't like the whole process except for that one little thing where you thought, oh, that was actually really cool, or that really helped my workflow or whatever. So everyone's unique approach to painting or whatever comes from that wealth of resources and people that are around you and YouTube and whatever, and become this sort of like amalgamation.
That's a nice way of putting it. I mean, God knows we probably all watch enough YouTube tutorials of painting stuff, so
constantly
to put something actually into practice, or to sort of to absorb something and then maybe do it like your own version of it is a really cool thing.
You must have been painting something and came up with a problem where you thought, oh, I need to do something, and then like from the back of your memory you thought, oh god, I saw a video once where they said if I just do a little bit of this. I think your leather video, I saw something, I remember your leather stuff with the cross hatching.
Yeah.
I had seen something similar in the past, and then I was like, I wonder if you had seen that video as well, because it was just like and it's a really cool effect. Now, I was never brave enough to try it, but when you did it, I was just like, whoa, that looks really, really good.
I think it's nice as well, I don't think you need to like massively succeed when you do something a bit different for the first time, but it's really cool if it just works well enough
Yeah.
To sort of, for you to be happy that, this is something that, you can do better next time, or it hasn't been a disaster, basically. If you try a new technique or a new thing in painting and it's not a disaster, and you can take something out of it, then that's what this is all about, isn't it? That's why you spend hours doing it.
I got put off glazing for a long time after my first try of glazing. Yeah.
I can understand that for sure. Well, talking of glazing, possibly less successfully, I had I painted up the last of the 4 adventurers, heroes from Blackstone Fortress that I'm playing with, and that's Amelin Shadow Guide, who is a Bioltan space elf, and has a big cloak, and lots of things in 40k have big cloaks, and that for me is definitely this thing that I've got, like, it's becoming almost like a mental block on. Like, it doesn't look terrible, and I actually did some freehand trying to do some thorns on it, but there's something about sort of big sweeping smooth areas and trying to get
it's like undulating
glazing, without it looking like paint, like somebody's just like painted it. So that I think that's why I've fallen back on things like cross hatching or using some sponging around the highlight areas, just to sort of delegate the quality of how it looks to randomness rather than me having to do it deliberately. But still super fun to do. That's Blackstone Fortress, the core box, all the hostiles and 4 explorers, like painted up to like a nice standard. So it's all, it's pretty rare to get a box of something that you've bought kind of basically done. So definitely happy with that. Elsewhere, some bits and bobs of terrain. So as we've been looking to get into bolt action.
That's correct, yeah.
I've been printing off some pretty cool terrain.
Yep.
And I've been painting a little bit of that. And that's been a fun thing. The prints are, I think it's fair to say, not radically detailed. They're quite straightforward, but nothing wrong with that. And so the challenge, I guess, has been to sort of, get some life into them, or to break up the regularity. So I've been doing that by, loads of oil wash, some streaking grime, pelting them with kind of bits of texture paste here and there, just to sort of break it up. And that's just been, a fun project where you're not so concerned about the details, that you can just do it on some kind of autopilot, see if something works. If it doesn't really matter. Gonna cover it with an oil wash anyway. And
it's almost a bit arts and craftsy by that point, isn't it? Because you're just like, let's mess about with mediums, and I'll try some thick paint or some thin paint, or stick a bit of sand on or whatever. And
absolutely. There was a suggestion from Drew, a member of West Allotment Wildlings, and in our Discord, about using some polyfiller on just real flat surfaces on buildings, just to sort of just again to give it some texture. Great idea.
And it would look like it had been rendered, wouldn't it? It would have that sort of
I mean, I don't want to start doing rendering on on 20,
you have to do it on all of them now.
Really getting that polyfiller to look,
That's how I'm expecting. So Chris Porter I printed off like a big stately house, three tier stately house.
That's amazing. That thing
Did you see?
really cool,
oh no, I didn't give him that one. I gave him so from the same set of ones. I think one of the things that you took was it a multi-story house?
Yeah,
multi-story shop. Yeah,
there's like 2 stories.
Yeah, so there's like a corner version of that as well.
Is that meant to be a shop, is it? So do I need to get some little...
It's called Broken Shop or something. Obviously, they're just... The files were free, and they were from somebody who was obviously, just new... not new, but, was a novice, 3D designer. But they were free on Thingiverse, so very thankful for that, for the designer. I can put links up to the files, but, they're great for exactly what you said. And I think, actually... it's great. Sometimes detail's great, isn't it? And we come from a hobby of Gothic cathedrals and machine work and all this kind of stuff. And it's almost worryingly detailed, isn't it? I mean, you did a really good job with that. The terrain for there was a Gallow Dark terrain. Was it into the dark?
A couple of bits of terrain from GW I've had a go at. So Into the Dark. Yeah, it's wild how detailed that is. Yeah. That's the sort of Space Hulk terrain, and also the mausoleum, the the Garden
the
of
Garden
Moor.
of Moor, yeah.
You know, I mean, and it's stunning. There's like, but there's roses and there's skulls, and yeah, I think it's kind of fun to try and add detail with some techniques and a little bit of, in inverted commas, artistry, rather than having to just feel that you've got to
Pick out
paint it
thousands of details. Yeah. And I think one of the problems with terrain is that it is just that it's terrain, isn't it? It's not a centerpiece, and I think it probably doesn't get looked at as much as the models do. So, I think good medium. They're detailed enough to have some, you know, they've got window frames on or doors or whatever.
They look like buildings.
And they've got like floorboards and stuff. So cool, but you get to be a bit imaginative with your different bits and bobs. So that's pretty cool, yeah. But I bowed out of painting them because I've literally spent probably hundreds of hours printing them now because there's a box full of it at the club, and a lot of filament. So luckily Josh uses the reels to make terrain, so he's got some STLs where you print stuff to go onto the empty reels, and it makes like little hab blocks.
That's cool.
For 40k. So I've just been palming them off on him.
Okay, but you know, this is a somewhat equitable division of labor.
Well, so that was the deal
Your
from me. The deal was I'll print it for you, you paint it, and then we're all happy.
Hooray! And you know, and maybe we can get onto this, but you know, Bolt Action 3rd edition has just been announced.
Yep.
So to have a table of cool, good-looking terrain to play some Bolt Action on sometime this year.
It makes a lot of difference, doesn't it? I think playing on a nice-looking table makes a lot of difference.
Definitely.
And just with that, no, quick shout out to Ryan, because I know he does listen. An old friend of mine who I got a text off out of the blue a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw the pictures of the bags of the basin material, but
yes,
he had one of these living walls in his office and they were tearing it down, and instead of chucking it out, he said, I know exactly who wants that. So he dropped off 2 sort of like big sacks of different types of mosses and phlox and lichens and all that kind of stuff, so they'll go great for Bolt Action, you know, like scrublands and bocage. Because bocage was a big thing in Normandy, wasn't it, in France? So thank you very much, Mitch. Yes,
that's brilliant, super cool. And just a couple of last little things. This is again coming from some chat in the West Allotment Wildlings Discord server. It's just fantastic how like somebody's chatting about something and then it just makes you think, I'm going to do that or whatever. So I've started painting up an Ultramarines chaplain. I've had this was not from Leviathan, it was from Indomitus. Yep. And super cool mini, but like my idea had been I was gonna, you know, edge highlight everything. I was going to practice, you know, double edge highlighting, so a chunky edge highlight, then
the white and blue, highlight.
So I got a leg more or less done, and then it sat for like a year, kind of predictably. Then somebody was talking about a Juan Hidalgo video for painting black armor, which basically involves some dry brushing up through different brightnesses.
Yeah.
Kind of go too far with the dry brushing, so it looks, you know, bit weird and dusty and you know, too bright, and then to knock the whole thing back with, in his video he uses
Black Lotus,
Black Lotus,
from Express Color,
Vallejo Express Color. I didn't have any of that, so I had gone up through a mixture of Sotek Green and Incubi Darkness, so greeny blue.
Incubi Darkness,
I used some Incubi Darkness to knock down the Sotek Green because it was too bright as like a first step.
Right.
So
is this from the dry brushing?
This is doing the dry brushing.
Yeah.
So from a black base,
Incubi Darkness, one of the best paints I've ever
Green
made,
and Incubi Darkness together. Incubi Darkness is a fantastic paint. Then some Fenrisian Grey, and at that point it's looking pretty scary how bright it is.
Yeah.
But then you knock it back with, if you've got Lotus Black, fantastic, and if you don't, so I used Black Templar contrast paint. 1 part of that, 3 parts of contrast medium.
Okay.
And Black Templar can dry pretty shiny and a bit weird sometimes, but with the contrast medium, basically fine. And it did have the impact, which is, I think it's meant to, of just knocking everything back. The contrast paint recedes away more from sort of raised areas, so you're left with the dry brushed highlights. And it looks good. It looks like a model that's been dry brushed, probably, if you like on close inspection. But for the lack of effort to a really decent result. And that's got me thinking now about, because, you know, I've got an Ultramarines army, and I've got to a point of spending too much time on, as I was getting a bit better at painting, spending more time on edge highlight, and now I'm thinking I need to go
following the Duncan Roads.
A little bit, and I think I just need to go back to, good quality dry brushing to like actually knock out a decent number of miniatures rather than just getting bogged down and getting turned off it.
I think the advent of using good dry brushing technique, and being a bit more purposeful with it than the sort of the old school in inverted commas, or maybe less experienced way of doing it. This mainly thanks to Byron from is it Artis Opus?
Artis Opus. Yeah. So makers of incredible, by all accounts, dry brushes, but also incredibly expensive, but also incredible tutorials like Byron's stuff. For me, I don't have the fancy brushes. I've got some makeup brushes, which cost very little, but like the stuff that he talks about in the videos of keeping it a little bit damp.
Yeah.
And
using palettes,
and testing and being exactly sure you've got the right sort of just the right amount of paint left in the dry brush before you sort of hit the model. It's all cracking advice, and it makes a massive difference.
It makes an enormous difference, because I remember some of the old stuff that I used to paint, and like it did look like someone had did it with actual chalk instead of like it gets really grainy and really dusty and stuff, doesn't it? And the difference between that and what I do now is light years apart. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking out some of Byron's videos if you're interested in that. But so it's good, it's good. And I think because it was that when Hidalgo one, it was for Black Templars it was meant to be, wasn't it? But chaplains obviously are canonically in black armor.
So my one's going to be a bit on the green side of black.
But Black Lotus is like a black green, so
but I think that's fine, and it'll be it'll still like contrast a lot with the main body of a very blue ultramarine army, and it'll still like stand out on the table. So really happy that that went from being sat never gonna get painted to sort of almost painted in a couple of hours.
And I think it looks good.
And cool. And other than that, what plans have I got? Well, I was wondering I don't know if I can count a couple of things in hobby progress. So I bought an army. Does that count?
Oh.
I bought Ian from the club's Necrons, which has taken my Necron force to I think I had about 1,500 points. So like Indomitus plus a bit of stuff. To like well over I've got 2,500 points or more and options now. And his are fantastically painted. I'll try and get some pictures put up. A completely different scheme than mine. So mine are all rusty. His are whatever the Necron subfaction, which has the orange glowy guns. I'm not going to remember, but anyway, but like really nicely painted. Some greens and some darker colors, and then with like the orange as the sort of as the glow and as the pop. They look fantastic, so I'm looking forward to playing with them.
Nice.
And I've sort of tidied up my wardrobe / hobby storage hobby storage space. So yeah, I'm counting that as hobby progress, because God, there was stuff in there that I'd completely forgotten and abandoned. And we were just talking about that before we started.
Like, I'm just trying to do this in. You can look. I've zoomed in a bit today because I've got so much stuff out at the moment. Trying to sort of just thin down the inventory a little bit. I mean, ultimately because I'll end up buying more stuff, but also like there's no reason for us to have multiple armies for multiple games when I can't realistically play them all in a timely sort of way. So I mean, hopefully they go to people that are local, because then I get to see them and get them played in clubs and stuff. But if not, whatever.
I mean, I guess that's the case with this army at Ian's. Like he'd obviously decided that Necrons weren't for him anymore in 10th. I think he still plays Tyranids. But it's a nice thing to be able to like to take them, and he can spend that money or reinvest it elsewhere, and I guess still see an army that he's painted on the tabletop.
Absolutely,
so it's a cool thing.
Absolutely.
And then plans. I've got a bolt action army to paint. So I'm doing some Polish guys. Coming out of the conversation that we had here a couple of episodes about playing games about real wars, that's obviously sparked that interest in thinking like, this is something I wanted to do. And a War Master army to paint. Those have been on the ticket for a little while and continue to be. But yeah, that's it. That's it for me, I think. So
Cool.
how about yourself, man?
Right, so I have actually done quite a lot of painting, but it's all been finishing off Chris's orc commission. So I'm on the final hurdles now. I'm just finishing off some boys. You can see them on the desk over there. They're just finished off. I think there's 16 boys or 20 boys there.
I'm seeing some good-looking classic boys there. These are not the newer ones, are they?
No, they're good. So they're not old, but they are they're from the last set. And he also has some knobs. There are some OG knobs in there with some great heads. I'll show you them before you go. There's this old one where it's got like a almost like World War One German helmet with like a big point on with a skull on top of it. They're really, really cool. It's definitely got that old late 90s vibe to it. So yeah, just got to finish those off, and then I've still got a my mind's gone totally blank. The big guy, Gazgul, yeah, Prophet of the War.
This the newer model.
It's a 3D print. So pretty much everything of his army is 3D prints. It's pretty cool. So I need to print a base for it, and I'm gonna do some nice. I haven't based any of his stuff, so he's basing it in his own way. But I'm going to print off some cool stuff to stick on the base, just so it's because it's a big base and a big model, and I think it will look nice with some scenery in the base as well.
So this is for Chris
Quirden, the
very competitive 40k player, now branching into sort of like more armies. I know he's been putting some Thousand Suns together as well.
So he's got a Thousand Suns army that he's playing at the moment. He's got a Custodes army, which probably never get to see the light of day these days because they're rubbish. He's got these orcs, and he's still obviously got his space wolves. So yeah,
I think that's very cool that you're gonna see your orcs probably scoring 100 points in 40k at some point.
In pretty much every year. Well, he's a good player.
Yeah,
I think there's definitely a difference, and I think.
Oh, mean as in very good.
Yeah.
I'm using
certainly he is that. So yeah, just doing the last little bits on that. So just finishing off these boys, and then I'll do the knobs next in the same style. So went with a red and yellow theme. So I've drawn from two of the main clans of the orcs, but I wanted just a little bit of variation, and I've done it in a way that if he wants to, he can split the units into their minimum size, and they'll have either predominantly yellow with red detail or predominantly red with yellow detail. But if he wants to also put them all together into a max size unit, then they'll look the same together because it's still the same colours, but just in various amounts in various places. So
nice.
I felt like
thought going in there. That's really cool, man.
It's just the way I operate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that would be helpful. And next I have Sorcerer Kings are the new army that came out for Conquest. Obviously, Conquest is my first and main love. I do. So I really enjoy the aesthetic of Sorcerer Kings. They've got a Arabic, Indian sort of vibe to them with they've got like genies and jinn, they're called jinn and Ifrit, and their infantry are very Persian in aesthetic and things like that. So I'm doing something a bit different this time. Instead of doing traditionally, Conquest comes as 4 miniatures on 4 bases in a little tray, as you know. But I'm going to multi-base, so I'm just going to paint 4 models and then glue them all to a tray. Because when you remove them, you don't remove individual models, you remove a tray at a time. So I've ordered some of the rulers from Green Stuff World. Now they've got one called Arabic, so it's got lots of like nice Arabic scripture and geometric patterns on, and then one called Arcane, and obviously they're called the Sorcerer Kings, so there's a lot of magic and stuff themed to them. So it's got like some arcane runes and things like that. So I'm going to use the Arabic stuff for the people the human element of it, and then I'm going to use the arcane one for the magical side of it, so the casters, but also the summoned elementals and things like that, and then or maybe mix and match the two. So I don't know if any of you have seen the rollers before, but you get something like a sculptor mold or clay or whatever, you roll it out and then you cut it to size, and it just makes this big patch of like a lovely pattern that you can use as basing material, and it looks like they're walking on, you know, carved stones or you know, like tiled floors or whatever. So I've promised myself it's going to be a bit of a passion project. It's not just going to be a get it based and get it done as quick as you can so you can play the games with it. So much so that I don't know if you saw the picture the other day, but I played a game with just the bases and the names printed on them, so I could actually do a good job of the basing. But yeah, so I did that.
So I just want to ask something. So I have seen this done before. It's very cool where you've got like some sort of like clay or modeling or compound or something, and then as you say, you use this like roller. You've got a rolling pin with.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
So what are you planning to do? Is it going to be green stuff, or is it going to be other sort of something else which works well?
Polymer clay.
Okay.
Is it called Sculpey? Sculpey, I think it's called.
Okay.
So it's what a lot of you know, like model makers and you know, people that actually sculpt things. So not like miniatures, but like people that do actually sculpt, like busts and things like that or whatever. So it's used typically, you know, like people that do like animatronics and things like that, use that stuff quite a lot. But it's oven baked, it doesn't shrink, which is important obviously when you're cutting things to size. It's pretty resilient as well. I've tried it with clay before, but clay becomes very brittle, which is
breaking and chipping
exactly
off,
which is good if you want to literally just make a big slab of it and then drop it and use it as like shards. But this I want it to look like they're walking on this floor.
So does it have like a little bit of give in it, or
so I just think it's not hard to the point of brittle, but it's hard. It's still a tough surface, and it looks a bit like plasticine. You know, it comes in like these strips that you mold together and then roll out, and then and the Green Stuff World rollers, you get a plain one that's just got rubber rings on the side to make it all an equal height, and then.
Oh, I'm excited to see how that comes out.
Yeah, me too.
Something different, right?
I've done a CAD design, which is basically a cookie cutter in the shape of a base. So I'll be able to just cut out sections of it to use, and then I'm looking forward to it. So that's that.
Cool.
And the last little note, so this is probably something that I wanted to. So. We talk about hobby progress quite a lot, and I know the last couple of episodes, I've never really got to where I wanted to be with my hobby progress. I think it's definitely worth saying, definitely worth thinking about that hobby. It is a hobby, isn't it? It's a hobby. It's something that you're meant to do to have fun and relax and enjoy yourself. I think if you put too much pressure on yourself to get stuff done, or if you say, if I haven't done this, then I'm rubbish, or I've failed at what I was meant to do, and things like that. It starts to take the fun out of it a little bit. So I think a bit of self-kindness in terms of that. It's good to have goals, and it's good to have aspirations, but don't sort of get too bogged down in them. Because I think I can sometimes give myself a slap on the wrist thinking, oh, well, you should have been doing this and you should have been doing that. The reason I didn't do it was because I was tired, or I was busy, or I had uni stuff to do, or whatever.
Had a life.
Had a child, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I think sometimes people are just like, oh, the narrative's always, oh, well, I haven't done any painting, and you'll do it when you do it. You will do it when you do it. You'll do it when you want to do it. You'll do it when it's right. Definitely try and set yourself some realistic, smart goals. But just go with the flow. It's not a big deal if you don't get everything that you want to get done. Seeing some progress is good. And like Lee was saying before, this regular little bits of hobby time, if you can. You don't have to paint an army in a month. or whatever. But if you get a model done, you'll get something out of it. You'll get a bit of, satisfaction, won't you? And then maybe that'll spur you to want to do a little bit more. So just bite-sized approach. Yeah.
I think that's absolutely right. It's good that it's good to say that. And yeah, we haven't, we haven't done a sort of like hobby motivation or why we paint or why we don't paint type thing. And I think we probably should do just to, go over like our experiences of that. But yeah, it's totally fine to have like we're chatting about it on this podcast, so it's like we need to have something done to sort of talk about or whatever. So that's a motivation in itself. But I'm sometimes conscious of like you finish some miniature or some army or whatever it is and you post pictures about it and you're kind of happy about it, but like there's definitely times where if you're not painting and you feel that you are, and then you see other people seeming to like crank stuff out, and I'm not cranking loads of stuff out, but like people are cranking loads of stuff out, that potentially has a sort of like demotivating factor.
No, exactly.
And so there is a sort of like there's an interaction between what you're painting or doing and what other people are doing. And there's definitely been times when I've like not painted anything for like a month or 2 months or something, and then
and you just fall back into it.
It comes back again, and
what's a comparison is a thief of joy.
Sounds good, and I think it's something we can talk a bit more about.
Absolutely.
But I mean, you're saying all that, you're still cranking out like this orc commission that look
but it's not for me.
So.
It's not for me.
Right.
It's not for me. Is it? It's so that's more work instead of personal hobby. But
and the thing with goals is really interesting as well, because I've got a vague idea that I'd like to just be continuously painting some stuff. And I've got a spreadsheet that's tracking how many models I'm painting this year. But I'm also, I do that almost in spite of myself, because I also think that, like, as you say, it is meant to be a hobby. And it's kind of like there's a tyranny of like turning your hobby into like more graft. Like it's like I've got spreadsheets.
Or a competition.
I've got spreadsheets at work. What the hell am I doing? Starting a spreadsheet for like something which is meant to be more free flowing. So it's definitely an interesting thing to talk some more about, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. So that's hobby progress. Massive tick in that box. Do you want to swing into some recent games that you've been playing, Daryl?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Sorcerer Kings came out for Conquest. Go on.
I was going to say, how's their play style fitting into the sort of the Conquest pantheon, and what are they like, what are they not like?
So it has some similarities to the Wadroon in terms of they've got a tempo play style of they have these things called rituals which build up over a turn or a number of turns, and then once they come off, the next turn you get to add them into your deck, and they activate like you would activate a unit, but they have their own abilities. So it would be like, a sorcerer gets to cast a spell, or this enemy unit can't score this turn, things like that. So they've got a lot of utility in things, but they're pretty slow compared to the other faction that has a similar thing. So I think one thing that I really like about Parabellum is that they are very rarely a shock release, do it to get loads of money company. They normally, actually, when they release things, probably release them slightly under the curve and then gently, just with very light touches until they're running sort of at the same level as everyone else, instead of that typical large company, here's a new army or a new book or whatever, everyone buy it, wow, they're unbeatable, why have they got a 70% win rate, and then 6 months down the line everyone's pissed off because all the stuff that they've just spent hundreds on so they can be competitive is now rubbish, and because they end up with like a big data slate or whatever that company would use, whatever term they would use for it.
Hasn't happened with Custodians,
no.
Side note,
they've been out for years, mate, that's why, but wait for the next wait for the next faction. So they're probably a little bit under the curve now, and they take quite a lot of mental arithmetic. Well, not mental arithmetic, but just a bit of jogging in terms of like just keeping things going, and you have to be very clever with scoring. They're not a big Alpha Strike faction, but they're definitely fun. It's the first time, and this makes us sound really big-headed, and I promise I'm not being, but I played against our friend Chris Porter the other day, and like it's the first time I've came out of a game of Conquest for ages, a game that I am experienced in, and been like, whoa, that was tough. You know what I mean?
Graph,
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. But I think like everything, I think everything needs to be equitable. And I think they do need some light touches just to get them to where they need to be. But I'm looking forward to seeing how they progress. We had a game. Josh ran a game of Warhammer Fantasy RPG. That was really fun. It's it's a classic actually that I have done before, but I really enjoyed doing it. It's called Rough Night at the Three Feathers, and it's really interesting, and actually a pretty tough one shot to run because there's about 5 different storylines happening at once, and as the GM you've got to be able to keep track of all of them.
So I was involved in this. For the first couple of turns, the first couple of whatever.
Yeah.
Bits of the storyline being sort of, and then real life intervened and I had to actually leave the game. But yeah, so that was my first ever experience of any kind of RPG, and yeah, I was definitely impressed with Josh running it.
Yeah,
reacting to players doing slightly unpredictable things whilst being quite good humored about that, and keeping it on track. Yeah. But yeah, I was definitely struck by even in just the bit that I was there of. There was a lot going on. There's like different story, little threads to try and figure out who are these cast of characters and what are they all about.
Yeah,
but, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, brilliant. It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I then ran because always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Josh tends to always run the RPGs and never gets to play in them himself, and that's something that he said. So I thought I'll sort it out, mate. No bother. So I ran a one shot of a 40k RPG called Wrath and Glory, and Josh played in that with our friend Rob and Carl, and it was really, really fun. So they play a group of well, I don't want to get too far into
Spoilers.
it, but so they work for a rogue trader. They're various humans of various abilities. There's a Ministorum priest and there's a
where's it set? Like on a craft, or like in a?
Well, no. So it's set on a planet. It's set on a planet in a system which has been closed off from the Imperium due to massive warp storms for a not inconsiderable amount of time. However, the system as a whole has remained a bastion of the Empire, or the Imperium, sorry. But as all things that have not got a spotlight shining on them at all times, shadows have developed and things are happening and blah, blah, blah. So, that was really fun. Enjoyed that. That was really good. Me and Rob also had our first game of Full Spectrum Dominance, which I believe I've shown on the podcast before.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that last time.
Yeah, but it's the game. Did we talk about the game?
Oh, maybe a little bit.
Well, it was good. Whatever. If we did or we did not, it was good. So some interesting sort of activation things where you use dice and you have a limited dice pool to do things, and depending on what you've rolled you can do different things. You can get some action economy by using leaders who can order multiple things to activate in one go. So that was really fun.
Where would you place this? Is this Full Spectrum Dominance, like 6 mil? So it's tiny stuff.
It is, yeah.
Notwithstanding that some of the models you've showed of like ridiculous, particularly like the terrain and like how much detail is on them. Pretty extraordinary stuff from whoever's putting. What are we looking at here?
That's an infantry stand. Oh no, that's actually. So the camera probably isn't even picking it up, but that's a small vehicle stand.
Amazing, and they're so cool. So is it a lot about the the sort of command?
Yeah, so it's
giving commands to different and how that plays out, or
kind of. It's very abstract in terms of it's not like terrain is like a kind of a. It's almost like you're playing Command and Conquer. you're looking down at this map from a top view. So,
Sure. Yep.
if you're touching the outside of terrain, you're still in the terrain. It's very sort of abstract in that term, and there's no inch by inch movement. They use a thing called DU. So I think a board is like 8 by 4 DU. So you measure your table and whatever it is that way, divide by 8, and that's a DU or whatever. But so yeah, that's it's just a fun game. It's a really fun game with some really cool models, amazing terrain. Rob's been painting some up, so I'll post some pictures of that. And it's the kind of thing where you can literally paint an army in an hour and a half, because it's just a bit of contrast, a couple of little highlights, because they're so small.
Yeah.
You don't have to go mad. Rob does, but he's a perfectionist. But yeah, I mean, I painted my whole tech army in probably 2 hours. So yeah,
that's great
for me. Yeah. And God, it feels bad to say, but I'm preparing for a 40k league at the Wildlands, so starting to put together a Votan.
What's going on?
I know.
What's going on?
So I've had this Votan.
Just like, is this like other people are like getting excited and you just want to join in, or like?
Well,
so sorry for any first time listeners. It's fair to say that, I mean, both of us really haven't always been the most. I mean, I'm going to talk about 40k in a minute. But the most positive about Games Workshop's flagship.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. Explain.
So, well, so I thought it's a good way to get to spend a bit more time with some of the people at the club. Obviously, I'm one of the people who run the club, and I interact with people a lot, but it's usually very surface level sort of things. And we've discussed it at length loads of times, but I've got a big lineage with 40k, and I want to love it, but I just think the rules are a bit rubbish. And I'm hoping that just playing the game with some people that I like might maybe change my mind a little bit about it. And I'll just acknowledge that it's a bit rubbish, but at least I got to spend some time with some pals, and that's okay.
Yep.
So let's see how that goes.
What faction?
Votan. So I've had them in the box since they came out. Never put them together or anything like that. So to build some excitement, I've found some cool STLs for some grudge tokens, so I've printed some of those off.
Nice. Any going heavy on any particular units in Votan, or a bit of a sprinkling of everything?
No, so I've got this thing, I don't know what it is, but whenever I'm trying to learn something, I like taking 2 of what I can. So I'm taking 2 of the normal infantry, I can't remember what they're called, 2 Hearthguard, 2 Thunderkin, 2 of the transports, 2 calls. Oh, was I taking 2 calls? Maybe one call, 1 Iron here champion. But it's just a bit of
that's a sensible
stuff that are okay. Yeah. So I'm not taking like one of everything, because I don't want to like confuse myself.
Yeah.
But equally, I just try to keep it. Keep it simple, stupid. So I've got some troops to hold some stuff. I've got some tanky troops with a Hearthguard, which are like their mini Terminators, to like do well, hopefully. I've got some stuff to kill some tanks. I've got some transports, and then I've got 1 melee unit, because I can't take an army without a melee unit. It's just what I like.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I've got 1 fast scouty unit.
So this is really cool. It'd be fun it's going to be interesting. Yeah, my enjoyment of this is going to be vicarious. I'm not taking part, but it's going to be really interesting just to. So I think Chris, the aforementioned Chris, is running this league.
Well, it's Chris and Barry and Lee, I believe, are doing it. Yeah,
really cool. And and then the way I saw that he described it was basically they're just going to be running it as a very big slow motion tournament. So it's going to be on like BCP, best post pairings. And you'll find out who your next game is. Yeah. But it won't be that you play it like now.
No, you get 18 days.
Or whatever. And then, it's going to be an interesting thing to see how it all plays out. Is there like how many rounds is it going?
I think it depends on how many people there is.
Is everyone going to play everyone, or is it just...
I have no idea.
Cool.
I have no idea.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, I'm trying to be... I think... I just need to... Because I've got so much stuff for it as well, I just need to find some enjoyment out of it. Otherwise, I'll just sell a lot.
That makes sense. And how, how do you feel I don't know what's the right way of saying it, like a responsibility to be sort of sufficiently positive about the game, but you know the other person's also having a good experience or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll whinge about it a lot, but I'll try. Well, I don't think I whinge much in actual game, and I tend to save commentary for afterwards. I always like a little bit of a debrief after a game if people want to, and I always think this is a bit, I wasn't too keen on that, or I didn't like this aspect of it, I didn't like that aspect of it.
I suppose we've got a podcast where we can whinge about
exactly,
it. You don't need to do that with it live real time.
But I'm just gonna go into it with open eyes and an open mind, and just see how it goes.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes, how that works out. What have I been playing? Well, I've talked already about Blackstone Fortress, the painting thereof, and yeah, had a couple of games in sort of two different timelines. So there's a bit of a campaign going on at the club, which I took part in a game in, and then for nights when I can't make it to the club because it's summer now, and my partner likes to go out sometimes as well, and that's probably sort of fair enough. Yeah, I'm having a bit of an ongoing campaign at home as well. But yeah, it's really fun. It's sort of sociable gaming. It lends itself well to like having a drink or two, and it's just it's varied enough that it's tactical enough to like you can make some interesting decisions.
Yeah,
but it's not so onerous that like you sort of get bogged down in it.
Yeah.
Which is basically ideal for me, really. We had a hilarious game at the club where Josh, a friend who had joined the game sort of halfway through, we'd probably a bit prematurely tried to, I'm going to try and say this without any spoilers, but like tried to assault one of the inner chambers. And you should probably like garner a few more power-ups before you do that. We got absolutely annihilated. But we realized that in order to sort of win the mission, it only took one of us to get somewhere.
Yeah.
So we used all of the activation dice for Josh's Kroot to like move 18 hexes across the entire board. Which was hilarious, and like I realized that like we all just like noticed that we were all just stood up because like he needed to make a few ridiculous dice rolls.
Yeah.
To like against all the odds like win, and I think that that's exactly that sort of ridiculous, silly, swingy, sociable gaming kind of thing that you hope it's going to be. And so absolutely the kind of thing that I definitely really enjoy. Also, I had a game of Underworlds a little while ago, which on a similar note was like quite a silly game. It was like a Slay the Gargant type situation. Yeah. So the Games Workshop published rules for this in White Dwarf. There's one Gargant in the middle of the board, and everyone else has to try and kill the Gargant, basically. And the Gargant starts with, I don't know, I can't remember, 40 wounds or something ridiculous. But yeah, just a lot of fun. Silly things happen, I think, quite early on. Like a Skaven model with like almost no wounds sort of managed to like donk the Gargant on the head, and it failed its like saves and then took wounds, and it's just silly things happen, which is it's definitely, I don't know, sometimes you don't want silly things to happen in game, and sometimes you do, and as long as they're happening when you expect them, then
I think I probably am more of the former than the latter. I'm pretty but I do every now and then enjoy that occasional like flash of color in the monochrome Blanchett world of gaming, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I love that, the seriousness and the crunchy side of gaming, you know.
Absolutely.
What I mean?
Well, but both things exist for all people.
Exactly. When we were talking about that RPG, and then when Paul pulls out of his pocket that he's just going to go and work in the kitchen of an inn, and we were like, for what reason? But he was just like, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm showing off my cooking skills, because his character obviously had a high cooking skill for some reason, and he rolled exceptionally well.
A halfling or something. Yeah. So he decided that he wasn't going to like try and solve the thing. He was just going to go and cook for a bit. So, I mean,
just trying to get a free meal.
Yeah, I mean, fair play for like RPG and an RPG.
He did. Yeah. He did a great job of it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah.
you could just see Josh GM and feeling like, right, okay.
Yes, you can do that.
You can do that, and I'm gonna have to bring you back possibly at some point. But yeah, very cool. So yeah, been enjoying some sociable games really of Blackstone Fortress and Underworlds, and just going on from what you were saying before, I had my first game of 40k in about 8 months or something like that. Just a smallish game, so 1,000 points from my friend Ben, who is basically the person that sort of like got me into 40k / wargaming like a good few years ago. And yeah, it was just really enjoyable. I enjoyed making a list, enjoyed thinking about my Necrons and what I was going to do, and sort of like trying to catch up on like what was some decent things that they can do. And it was just a really fun game of like probably a pretty casual game of us both definitely forgetting a decent amount of like our own
special rules,
our own special rules and things that our models that should be doing. But really good. So my Necrons are, I don't know, like probably not super optimized at all, but basically a big old blob of warriors reanimating with a reanimator next to them. And it's the Royal Warden that lets them retreat, shoot, and charge again, which is quite good for like a 50-point-ish model or something. And a Nightbringer to kill stuff, because
kill everything.
It's just gone up in points. But
I think Catans are supposed to be pretty good on the.
I think there's some like multiple Catan lists floating around. So yeah, they all are ridiculously good. Strength 14 attacks and things. And then just some other bits and bobs. But yeah, just really enjoyable. And yeah, it is that thing like, like 40k is like meeting up with an old friend, and if you can have a good conversation with them whilst meeting up, then you're sort of like, this guy's not so bad, So it's fun to get back in, as it were, to get back into the saddle of 40k. So yeah, I can offer you that that optimistic point of view from my game, but you're gonna have a fantastic time in this league. And latterly, I had a game of Scythe with my friend Jamie on Friday night just gone. Not to completion because it's a bit more complicated than what we remembered. It's a great game. It's like such like a super elegant sort of Euro style board game where so many of the things that you do interlock with other things and other options, and it just feels beautifully balanced. And it's like it was really enjoyable to play a good few rounds of it, just to reacquaint ourselves with like, that's when you move this thing from here that opens up that way of upgrading what's going on. So yeah, Scythe is kind of looks a bit like Risk. It's just territories going on, and there's lots of resource management, and you have to trade things for other things and try and sort of like,
I think it's a phenomenal game.
It's it's like an absolute we need to play more of it basically, and we need to play more of it when we're not drinking as much as well. But it's just really elegant. We use that word quite a bit when talking about games, and Scythe really is an elegant game.
Yes,
everything sort of interacts with everything else in like a really pleasant way. So,
and I think it feels different enough every time you play it that it stays. I mean, I don't play it every week, but I've played it, probably 8 or 9 times, and each time it's felt different enough with different players and different event cards happening to you, and with the different factions.
The factions are all different from the start. They've got specifically different strengths and starting numbers of the things which they control. So fantastic. So yeah, that's it for games played.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go flying into good GW, bad GW.
Warning. Our current program has been interrupted for an urgent broadcast by Mr. of Battle 81.
Daryl. So yeah, I've just put on a special hat. I'm hoping that comes across there. But for anyone on the audio, do you want to describe what I've put on my head there?
So it's a luminous red cap emblazoned with "Make Warhammer Great Again."
Yeah, and you might wonder why I would feel the need to do that. But yeah, we do need to make Warhammer great again, Daryl, because it used to be great, and I think maybe now it's not great. And it's so sad to see what's going on, and it's all basically about this whole woke situation that's happening. And I don't know if you've been keeping up to date with this, but it's all about the woke. It's so sad to see in this terrible situation. It's all about the wokeists and the woke tourists who are sort of inserting themselves into our hobby, and and in a literal and figurative sense. They're getting themselves right up inserted into the hobby, and they're basically all communists. And you hear these phrases of wokers of the world unite. Don't know if you've been hearing this.
No, I tried
So
not.
sad to see. So sad to see. And yes, look, I don't know if you've guessed yet, but I am talking about the female custodies, or one female custodian. And I've heard people talking about the other big retcons going on with Necrons in 5th edition, or Primarchs being sons of the Emperor and not just some super OP Space Marines, and Rogel Dawn tanks, which have been invented but apparently always existed. And that's fine, because all of those things weren't woke.
No.
And woke, as we know, or as we're learning, it ruins everything. It's made Star Wars terrible. It's all about it's about BlackRock. It's about this finance company that's coming in and buying everything, and they use their evil finances to make everything woke. And it's a DEI, and it's just so sad to see. And it's a thin end of the wedge, because what next? We've got this female custodian. People are getting worried about female Space Marines. I think we're going to end up with, something, far more extraordinary than that. I think we could be looking at, like black pirate Jewish Space Marines coming. We don't know what's coming next, and we need to know what we're going to do about this. So the only thing we can do is burn our armies. To be honest, we need to burn our armies in cleansing purity, cleansing fire.
So for not the wokest.
No, so I've been, I've burnt my armies so far. I've burnt all my Imperial armies.
Good. Yeah.
And if at any point, we start seeing Necrons in boob plate, then they'll be getting burnt too. So just to sum up, it's woke, it's BlackRock, it's so sad to see. It's really a terrible situation. It's a horrible situation. These people are killing our hobby and our IP, and we need to gatekeep, because even though most people in the real world say that they aren't bothered, I don't believe them. And even though that the authors of Black Library books have said that there's no one and true 40k canon, and it's a work of many authors. But that just reminds me of the time when the Emperor said that he wasn't a god, even though that the word bearers actually knew that he was.
Of course.
So we shouldn't believe that these so-called authors, because, just like Erebus, I think we and I know better. So we're Erebus in this situation, an in-universe gatekeeper. And even though the one thing that everyone can agree on in the lore is that Erebus is basically a complete dick.
Yep.
And and that's the point where I've sort of lost my train of thought. So anyway, down with the woke, down with the wokists, keep your gates, and that's it.
Keep your gates.
And any other thoughts on female custodian?
I have. I think the model looks pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to be quite clear, I agree with almost none of what I just said there, but I just felt like doing that little sort of performance piece. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I think it tells us something about, like, maybe online culture more than anything.
Yeah.
I don't think I've met anyone or really talked to anyone who actually cares in like I say, in the real world that plays 40k. But there we go.
Yeah.
We've had some drama.
You don't hold on. You don't think you've ever met anyone that plays 40k or that thinks that?
No, I'm saying I've not met anyone that plays 40k regularly.
Yeah.
Who is actually involved in it.
Yeah.
To that extent, who actually cares that there's been this sort of retconning of law. And like, it's probably worth saying it was probably not a great thing for GW to do, to like take to Twitter to say that something which appears not to have been the case, you can have female custodians. Now is not a great way of doing it. But yeah.
I think it's absolutely bizarre that people find the need to have issue with something that is so not harming in any way, shape, or form, and if anything, it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm one of the wokest that your skit was about, but
are you woke? Are you?
Well, no, I'm not. I just think variety is the spice of life. I think everybody deserves equal representation, and I think the ability to put a fictional character into an element of fiction which is so broad and open-ended is entirely the right of the company who own the IP and the people who write for it, and has absolutely nothing to do with people who buy plastic toy soldiers.
Yeah, well said. You've said it probably in a slightly less daft way than me, but I think it's exactly the same point. It is just fluff for toy soldiers, and that's not. And we all love it, and we know that we all love it, and get so like deeply invested. But that really is what it is. And so so a little bit less excitement about it probably would be a sensible thing.
It's bizarre, man.
Anything good that GW's done that we want to sort of, like I've just wagged my finger at them there. Anything that we'd like to say that's
Well, did you wag your finger at them, or did you wag your finger at the people that are taking issue with them for?
So the guy that was wearing the hat, that's like a new character that I'm creating.
Right, okay.
Mr. of Battle 81.
Mr. of Battle 81.
He was wagging his finger at the wokists.
Me,
actually, no, I'm just not. It's
maybe
I'm not wagging my finger. I'm wagging my finger at the fact that people get up a hype about.
It's bizarre, and actually, like genuinely, if you take issue with it, I think you really need to have a little think about your priorities, because it's nothing. It's so inconsequential and not in any way, shape, or form going to affect you that being angry about it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
I will say something good about GW that they've done lately is the painting tutorials. So like there's a potted history of GW's painting tutorials. There was, first we had Duncan Rhodes, and then we had Peachy. And then they went through this weird phase of not showing the people's faces.
The magic hands.
The only hands sort of controversy. I actually come across a couple of the painting tutorials lately where they were talking about like painting some Tyranids in different ways, and discussing how it might work and it might not work, and you could see the faces, and they were having discussions about it, and they actually showed some stuff which kind of didn't work. So it wasn't this whole idea of like, oh, if you just do this, everything's perfect all the time. And that seemed to me to be like a really useful way for like somebody just getting into it, of seeing how the brand wants you to paint. So hopefully things are looking up for painting tutorials.
Good. Yeah, I think that's a step in the right direction.
So I'm gonna doff my cap, not that one, to the GW painting tutorials.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
Okie dokie.
The new Grombrindal, the White Dwarf miniature. That's cool. Good GW
really
for that.
Cool.
It's a really cool model.
Yeah. There's been some good White Dwarfs. That's got like a history to itself as well, hasn't it? But yeah, okay, all right. Enough silly nonsense. Shall we go into our main topic?
Let's do it.
And talk about dead games. So shall we define our terms first? What do we mean by dead games?
So I think the type of game that we're thinking about is a game that has stopped being actively supported by the producer of the game, and thus no longer having releases, or FAQs, or new models, anything like that. So, dead in terms of no longer supported by manufacturer, not necessarily not being played, because I think it's impossible to find a truly dead game, as in one that was not played anyway, because there's always pockets of something in here and there, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think that's probably mentioned a lot, but it's probably something that's really good about tabletop gaming as opposed to PC gaming or whatever. If there's no servers for the game that you want to play, then you kind of knacked.
Can't play.
But if you've got the rules and some models and some another willing citizen, then no game is ever like completely dead.
Exactly.
And so there is that. What do you think then, Daryl, that could be some of the pros and cons of playing games which aren't being actively supported by the person or people that made them?
I think it removes some of the uncertainty or that sort of roller coaster of meta trains, doesn't it? I think I originally got, when I started playing back into Warhammer with a load of friends who almost, they just wanted to take a step back to second edition, because it was just in that complete complete state in the terms of nothing else was coming out for it. No more books, no more rule changes, nothing else. It was just, that's where we're at. And it wasn't the next person who gets a release is going to win games for the next 6 months because they've got the best unit, or, this new book doesn't make everything he's got good and everything I've got bad. So I think there's definitely a pro in that.
Yeah.
Also maybe a con if your army's rubbish in that edition.
You're a bit
knackered on, yeah.
I suppose at least you'll know whether or not you're okay with that, or whether there's a way around it. Are you gonna max on a certain unit, or use a certain magic, or whatever it is? So there might be ways around it. But yeah, I guess so. Yeah, the ecosystem is settled and final to some extent, isn't it? At that point, so I suppose that means everybody knows where things are.
Yeah.
So if you want a really hard game, then you can play that underpowered faction, assuming that they're not impossible to actually make any headway with.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is that. So what's the flip side of that though? So talking about 40k and a release schedule, there is a thing of being excited about new models and new releases, and so there's none of that.
Yeah, you never get that. I just fancy something slightly different. I just want my army to have that slightly new angle, because sometimes a unit gets released and it doesn't change an army, but it just plugs a little gap, or it just makes you think, I'm not going to take 3 of these, I'll take 2 of them and one of this new thing, because it does a similar thing but maybe in a different way or whatever. And it's cool models and that sort of stuff. So I think it can feel very final in the same way, can't it, of this is where I'm at and this is what I've got. What else? Maybe a bit of nostalgia.
Definitely nostalgia.
Yeah. So I think that second edition 40k to me was my initial entry point to it, and I do hold it in high regards. I mean, I barely remember the rule set, to be honest with you, but if at all. But I remember the books, and I remember the artwork, and I remember the cardboard standy orc dreadnought.
Yeah. And those things are a big part of it as well, Those things are all part of the experience. Those are the hooks that get into you.
The single part marines and the single part the single pose orcs with the
many Gretchen.
Yeah.
You still see boxes of second edition.
Yeah.
For quite a lot of money when one turns up with most of the bits there on eBay.
There's definitely that sort of element of maybe rose tinted glasses, but that heartwarming feeling of it's just something familiar, isn't it? It's like loading up, and going and playing Super Mario Brothers again after the 30 years or whatever that it's been out, and it's the same music, the same levels that you've done 1,000 times, but it's just great. Yeah,
it's nice to get into some nostalgia once in a while for sure. I've put down here, and this is we'll get into the actual specific games that we've played in a bit, but I put down here rules that may, on the one hand, seem sort of pleasantly streamlined in comparison to modern rule sets, or a bit dated, or both.
So I think that does come in, doesn't it? So I think you have to sort of cherry pick your era of a game, don't you? Because quite often editions of games fall on their face because of too much nuance or complexity or things like that. I remember one of the RPGs that we're talking about, Warhammer Fantasy RPG. One of the editions brought in a load of bespoke dice and then a load of extra sums to do, and I thought, it just felt like a lot, a lot of extra work for the same outcome, really. So sometimes editions on something that you look at with a load of nostalgia purely because of all of the extra flicking backwards and forwards in books and things. Yeah.
Cool. And I've also put down just the possibility of, I think this probably is more like when a game has been given its last rites fairly recently, and probably a lot of people at that point will maybe divest themselves of it, or to get out of it. And at that point, you know, if it's something that you're interested in, you can pick up like a starter box plus some stuff for like, you know, a good price. It can be, and if something's good, it can be an economical way of getting into it.
I've recently done that with Drop Fleet Commander, bought a load of sort of like forces for it, for reasonably good money, because I think whether or not it was intentional or not, but TT Combat, who had taken it over, kind of just sort of went quite quiet on it, and it didn't really get too much happening. So a load of people started selling stuff. I bought stuff, and then lo and behold, you know, I don't know if they got a load of money from the Kickstarters or whatever, but then new models were coming out, talking about rules, all that kind of stuff. So now it's starting to get a bit of buzz around it again. So yeah, it's good. And I did the same with Monster Apocalypse as well. I've got a load of Monster Apocalypse stuff there, which I got cheap for what it is, because it kind of Privateer Press had that bit of a rough period, and you know, they were thinking about maybe axing War Master and the new version of it. So not War Master, War Machine.
War Machine. And I've been seeing some stuff about War Machine lately by people who usually make content for other things. So Privateer Press are back, are they, or on the up a little bit?
So they changed their whole sort of approach. They've went through a lot of 3D printed models now, and they send out kits. It's actually quite a clever plan. So they send out a kit for a model, and if you don't know about War Machine or Hordes, you have infantry, but you also have these, they call either jacks or brute or something like
big
that.
Stuff,
but big stuff, yeah. And it's normally a core kit, but with either a different head and different arms, or you know, different weapon selection. And what they do now is they sell you a kit, and instead of having to buy two kits, they actually put magnets in the kit with it, and pre sculpted magnet holes, so that you can just switch between games or whatever if you need to.
It's great when the people that make something notice what people are doing in the real world, and like, okay, well, we'll
charge an extra couple of quid because people are going to do it anyways. But then there's the kit, and they've obviously saved money. They've ended up going down the 3D printing route, because I don't think they were having great sales of the old War Machine Hordes things. But then I think it's Mark IV came out, which was the new one. It fell on its arse a little bit, and then they've done a load of stuff to try and bring it back round. But yeah,
that's cool. So I guess there's examples, isn't there, of when, you know, like a zombie, you know, a game can sort of like rise from the dead, still being sort of supported to some extent by the people, or a version of the people that you know, created it in the first place. I know we've had a game of Guild Ball. Yep,
we did. Yeah.
Is that an example of that happening?
This was pre.
So we played it as a red game.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously they must have got wind of that, and then
so just our game, which I don't think we even finished it with. But so Guild Ball, by all rights, Steamforged Games came out with a press release, said, we feel like Guild Ball has now reached the end of its natural life. We're just going to leave it there. That's it. That's the end of Guild Ball as you know it. No more teams, no more content. Blah blah blah.
How did that go down?
Badly, very badly. There was a lot of negative community sort of commentary about it, and understandably, Guild Ball was a really loved game, but I personally think it was a business thing. So they were making a lot of money from the Kickstarters, and I think they just wanted to focus everything on their Kickstarters. They do a lot of board game Kickstarters, and they had some notoriously bad deliveries of them, and I was wondering if they were maybe just trying to have all hands on deck for that, or whether they did genuinely just think that they didn't want to do anything else for it. But down the line a little, people kept playing despite it being cancelled, and then a group of experienced players, tournament officials, all that kind of stuff got together and made something called the Guild Ball Community Project. GBCP, and they developed a new FAQ, which had, you know, changes and rule set, sort of updates to rules for character cards and things like that, and they also even developed their own minor guild, the Lamplighters, which they released And Guild Ball was sort of on and up. There was more and more community engagement. Tournaments were being ran, all this kind of stuff, like national tournaments, all that kind of stuff. And, call us a cynic, but I feel like Steamforge probably clocked on that these people were maybe making a bit of money from their old IP and saw that people were still interested and came across as the benevolent God and said, oh, well, we'll bring it back. We'll do this. We'll take the advice of the GBCP, but we're going to be delivering it for you. So they've now brought back the products. You can now get them as print on demand, so they don't get made in a factory like the old ones do. They're 3D printed, and they're printed on demand. They're not like stock on shelves. But they did release a new updated rule book. Good guy Steamforge, though, what they have done is they've allowed people to download all of the STLs for the original box set called Kickoff. Well, it's not the original box set, but it was the boxed game that they produced, sure, which has 2 teams in it, goals, tokens, life dials, all that kind of stuff, completely free. So you can print off 2 teams and everything that you need to play the game, which is very good of them. So yeah, it feels like when games do start to get a little bit of love or longing from communities, there are people that are out there that still do that thing. I know we've got it down later on, but it's very much the same. There's a group called Nisei now. There's a card game that I like called Android Netrunner, which got dropped by Fantasy Flight Games. That was the end. And then this company, Nisei, have released for free multiple packs now of the cards, of new cards that fit in seamlessly with the game. And you can buy them printed from them as like a way of like thanking them for doing it or whatever, but you can also just download them and print them off yourself, and that's fine. There's nothing and they've hosted national tournaments, provided all this new content and everything. And Emerald Legacy is a company that did the same for Legend of the Five Rings, which was another Fantasy Flight card game that ended up sort of reaching the end of its life. So there's definitely these community projects out there that are keeping things alive, much like War Master Revolution, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get on. We'll talk about that a little bit with War Master, but it's really interesting. It's really interesting that something is dropped by whoever's making it, kept alive by a community, or kept sufficiently alive, then maybe gets some traction. Somebody does something which sort of like zhuzhes up some more interest, and then whoever originally had it like comes back in. And I sort of like, I wonder whether it's, you sort of wonder whether, is there like a sort of like a free market of like rule sets, and the ones that, the ones which are genuinely good just sort of like rise to the top, and people will continue playing them? Or is it that, a particular sort of confluence of like circumstances have happened, maybe in a particular place or with a group of people, and then other people look at them and think they're cool, what are they doing with this? And then we want some of that, and then it sort of like spreads out in those concentric circles.
I definitely think passion about something is infectious, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, should we talk about some of the dead or zombie back to life type of games that we played? I know you've mentioned a few there. Is there any other? I mean, we've mentioned War Master. Should we talk about that a bit? Because War Master was a epic scale fantasy version of Warhammer Fantasy, rules by Rick Priestley, and was dropped, I think I'm right in saying, because GW at a point had very poor sales for the version of 40k epic that was out at the time, and decided we're not doing epic scale stuff, or we're cutting right back on that, and we're focusing on like the 3 or 4 main games. So War Master Revolution was then, I think, a rule set which was written by a group of people or somebody in the Czech Republic, or at least was popularized there, which has basically taken Rick Priestley's original rules and streamlining, updating them. I mean, I've never played the original, so I'm taking that on what other people have said. But yeah, and then it sort of survived there for a period of time, and then and then it seems to have just
It's
sort
had
of,
its
like come
renaissance,
back, and
hasn't it? Yeah.
and 3D printing obviously helps because you can get hold of armies that look really cool. But like, it's just really interesting how, and like when was War Master out? Was it like early 2000s? I think like 2001,
Yeah.
2002. So it's more than 20 years ago, and like a very, very slow boomerang. It's sort of like come back, at least to me, and not to everyone else, but like to me, because it's something that I would have loved to have been into as a kid, wasn't.
Yeah.
And now it exists, and it's possible to do it, and you can get good friends to 3D print stuff, and you're up and running. It's fantastic.
I think it definitely made a more than a local renaissance, so didn't it? Because I remember it just being a big thing on YouTube for quite a while, and a lot of people were like doing painting tutorials, or like they were calling it tiny Warhammer and blah blah blah. And there was a lot of things about playing it on such a small scale, and I remember being at the LGT like 3-4 years ago, and seeing like they still had a reasonable sized group of players playing, and I was just like, I'd never heard of it back then. I was just like,
it's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, I think like each one of these sort of like games or situations, it'd be interesting to sort of like go back and try and sort of like uncover what the story is of it coming back, and sort of seeing whether there are common threads, because we know 3D printing probably helps with these things.
Absolutely.
The internet is quite handy for being able to see what's going on in another place and be able to like copy it or bring it over here. You can copy and paste tournament packs and things like that. So yeah, it's really interesting. Any other ones that you want to mention that you've played whilst dead?
What else have I played? No, I think I've already probably talked about all mine. I did fantasy. Old editions of fantasy I've had some games of. I think Sixth was the one that we ended up settling on. But no, you've got some more recent experience of some more dead games, haven't you?
Well, I mean, Warhammer Fantasy was the game that I wanted to play to
you
get
came
back
in
into
its death throes, all right?
I came in as it sort of like as it carked it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a fight. I kind of didn't mind that, as when you're coming into the hobby or to particular a game that you might be interested in. But there's a lot going on, and it kind of was fine for me to know that there wasn't going to be any new stuff coming out. So I sort of like went about like just slowly getting a collection of the 8th edition army books, which are amazingly high, really nicely done, with like fantastic lore and it's quite sort of flavoursome rules. Got a copy of the big chunky 8th edition big rule book, which is like it's kind of knocks the current 40k Leviathan books and other similar publications out the park. Partly, for me, partly because it's got loads of John Blanche, like drawings in it and stuff. But it was fine and quite enjoyable to get into a game. I only had like 3 or 4 games with like 1 or 2 select pals, because I wasn't going to any clubs. I wasn't part of any sort of like bigger communities or anything like that. But just to sort of rediscover the lore and to get into it a bit as an adult in a way that I would have liked to as a kid, but it was never going to happen. Didn't have the money over time, whatever. It was kind of fine, and then from that, I think the first White Dwarf that I ever got was had like Man of War on the front cover. So I'd always wanted to like have a go of Man of War, and then a friend who's into some older games as well mentioned that he had it. And did I want to have a game? And obviously, yes, I did.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And that was a fantastic experience as well. And then, other games like GW games, I mean, Blood Bowl for the longest time wasn't supported, right? But that had a significant sort of like, community
ongoing following,
living rule book or something, which was, like updated, probably not that often, but like often enough. And to the extent that obviously GW did that thing, right, where they were like, oh, that's okay.
Hold on a minute,
we can sell some more miniatures, so we'll come back in and like we'll start supporting us again. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned as well about sticking with an edition of a game, because I've played quite a lot of this current edition of Kill Team, 2nd edition, depending on how you're counting, but let's call it 2nd edition Kill Team currently.
Yeah.
And I like it plenty. And I've got a bunch of mission packs that I haven't even barely started,
Yeah.
and a bunch of Into the Dark Terrain with loads more missions to go. And so at this point, I think the likelihood is that, we're on a 3-year cycle. There's probably going to be a new edition of Kill Team, either 3 or 2.5 or something this year.
Yeah.
Something like that's probably going to happen this year. And I might just, and I did say this with the last edition, it didn't happen. But I might just ignore that and just play this edition.
Yeah.
Because it's fun and I've got some people to play with, and that's fine.
Yeah, and like you said, you end up with such a volume of content that unless you're playing very, very frequently, it's hard to actually get your money's worth in terms of like experiencing it all properly, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that would be a totally reasonable thing to do, even if it's just skip an edition or like play second edition until you've done all the stuff that you want to do, and then maybe think about entering down the line. But yeah.
Any dead or partially dead or back from the dead games that you want to play? Is there anything that's out there that you're interested in?
Well, so is Inquisition 20 that you've written down there?
Yeah.
Is that's the community one, isn't it? That's not because it's not. There is a game called Inquisitor. It was the old 54mm.
There's a game called Inquisitor, which was an absolute oddity. Games Workshop made, which is 54mm models, and it didn't do great. But it had an amazing rule book in terms of like looking at it and the stories and stuff. But it was very RPG-ish.
Yeah.
And then so there's a community thing called Inc 28.
Oh, is that what it is? All right, okay.
Which is I've looked into it a little bit, which is like using 28mm models with an amended rulebook. I'm not sure where the rulebook's coming from, but it's definitely meant to be sort of in the same sort of like flavor of 40k, which is looking at the sort of like weirder sort of like recesses of of the Imperium. And the people who seem to get into Inc 28 seem to be really into Blanchitsu styles of painting and heavily converted models where they've invested time in telling stories with the models. So that's definitely something I'm interested in. I've got no idea how the rules go or how that works at all. And maybe on a fairly similar sort of plane, but in Fantasyland, Wartime as well, which seems to have a lot of people. I've never played it.
Oh yeah, no, it is a really good game. Yeah.
I mean, I am enjoying Frostgrave quite a lot, and I wonder whether or not that's how similar that is to Mordheim, and whether that's doing it.
So I definitely feel like it is. So I definitely feel like part of the experiences are there with Frostgrave. Frostgrave definitely peels back complexity.
Yeah, and I do enjoy that. So I enjoy the straightforwardness of it.
You could play Frostgrave in a grimdark setting with grimdark models, Blanchitsu models, and have a Mordheim experience that is not a million miles away from where it needs to be. There's just a bit more magic in it, basically.
Yeah. But there we go. Dead games. It's a whole interesting. It's a really interesting thing. I think it's another benefit of like being part of a club or any sort of community where there's people that have been playing stuff for a period of time. You're probably likely to sort of come across something that you might fancy playing, and it's probably somebody's favorite ever game that they played when they were a kid, and they've probably maybe still got all the models and stuff. So I think it's something to get into.
and would be very happy to show you.
Yeah, absolutely. So give Dead Games a try.
Absolutely.
All right. So shall we look to wrap things up then? So
Sounds
secondary
good.
objectives. You go, Daryl. What have you been doing? Well, first of all, I mean, we said last time we were both about to go to see June 2 last time. Quick non-spoilery reviews. Happy with what was on at the cinema?
Bloody good, yeah, really, really good. So I think the film was great. The pacing was good. I think you have to. It demands a slight level of sort of I hate the term intelligence, but like, I think you need to be able to interpret the fact that there's some big time jumps without them being obviously said that this has happened over a period of, because there's certain things that happen over months instead of just being from 1 minute to the next, which it looks like in the film.
Yeah.
Some of the art direction in it was fantastic. The Harkonnen bits where the palette turns from that like warm, ruddy yellow to that like bleachingly white and black, like almost eye-piercingly white and black, overexposed sort of thing, and it really exaggerates that like that mixture of industry and sterility of the Harkonnens. Is just, it was great, really, really, really good. I think it's just a film full of great actors and a great story as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that
except
thing.
for I don't like Zendaya as an actress. I just think she's I don't know. She just doesn't. I don't think she fits that character very well. I don't. Sorry, I'll take that back. I don't not like her as an actress. I don't think she was right for this role.
Okay, interesting.
I don't think she fits it very well.
Have you read the books?
I've read the first book. Yeah.
So I've just started reading the first book, and it's interesting because I've heard people say that it's like so much world building and so much detail, and it's a lot to get into. I don't know. Haven't seen the first film. The first book was just like, whoop, we're up and running. We're doing this Bene Gesserit stuff, and and it was kind of like fine to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah, the film's amazing. Like,
wait until you get the book 4. I think it's 4.
Okay.
There's some pretty abstract
meaty stuff.
Abstract stuff starts to happen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a yeah. So Scott, I was talking to Scott about it the other day. I was just like, what? I can't see how it could ever make a TV screen or a film screen.
Mm-hmm. I think they probably won't, because they're going to do these 3 of this, and probably
that's
going to be like over the first 2 books, I think. Right? Yeah. So yeah. And then leave it there.
I thought was this one not the first book split into 2 and a bit more?
I think that's what we've had so far, and I think the 3rd film is the 2nd book.
Yeah.
But fantastic stuff. Fantastic, just that there's stuff on at the cinema which like requires a bit of attention and thought, and yet is still massively bombastic blockbuster action with like wild fight scenes and stuff.
Yeah. So. And do you know what it is? Do you know one thing that I really like about it as well is they've dialed back on special effects as well, in terms of like, like when the Sodok or even the Harkonnens are getting around places, like they're on zip wires, you can see they're on, and it looks awkward, and like it's still got a bit of a 80s sci-fi vibe to it, instead of them being like, them turning CGI people and flying away like Iron Man when they with the jetpacks.
So it's the Sardaukar, right? Whoever sort of like ninja dudes that can sort of like,
they're the Emperor's and elite troops. Yeah. So when they're getting dropped in, they've got like little. Yeah.
There's a bit where they're sort of scaling up some.
No, that's the Harkonnens, where they're wearing all black and they're going up the rock face. Yeah.
But that. Yep. And then they're just touching the rocks as they go by, and it's just that like physicality. Yeah. Of like this, they've placed themselves within the world that they're meant to be.
Yeah. And it almost looks a little bit awkward, doesn't it? Because they're like literally like. You can see that they're on the wires and they're going up, and they've got it's something like out of 2000: A Space Odyssey, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They're just 2001, sorry, and they have that little sort of climbing. It's not like super high, what's the word, like super high tech visuals and stuff like that. It's got that like grittiness to it, but yeah,
things have weight and sort of presence and all of that stuff. And it's like the first Mandalorian series or whatever, when something's done and it feels like all the parts do exist within the same sort of frame.
I noticed something. I saw a clip on YouTube. This is the thing about when I love films that are done well, good sci-fi films that are done well, that are based on these big worlds, because it spurs me, just like Warhammer does, where like someone might play Space Marine or play the old Total War, whatever, and then they'll be like, I wonder what Tyranids are, whatever, or I wonder what a gene seed is, or whatever, and then it makes you end up watching these mad lore videos or reading books about it. And I totally missed in the first film, where the Sword Out car, where there's a the Emperor's envoys meeting with the Sword Out car, and he's saying you need to, you're gonna have to go and kill the Atreides. But there's all those people that are upside down in the big stone triangles that have been killed and they're being exsanguinated.
Okay.
And the Sword Out car are being like blessed with their blood.
With the blood,
and
right,
it's where there's the guy doing the mad Mongolian throat singing, litany.
That's like all making sense now, but that hadn't like the full sort of in universe lore of that hadn't quite sort of like probably like struck me neither. But fantastic.
Yeah, really.
Some amazing like like wide angle shots of various things across the two films, isn't it? Which is all to the good.
Yeah. What a spectacle.
All right, well, that was last time. What have you been up to this time, secondary objective wise?
So
fun.
Just getting stuff ready for the allotment. So hobby, but out the house hobby. So obviously we like sitting in the house at a painting desk or standing at a table rolling dice with our friends. But one of my definite well-being things is spending some time in the allotment. I know you've got one as well.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky, mine's literally just outside my back gate, so I can get there pretty easily. So me and my fiance have had a load of seedlings set away, so they're going well, and I've went out and bought a load of chili plants yesterday, some varietals. I don't have the facility to start off chili plants because you need some really good quality growing equipment to do that. To do it properly anyways, to get strong plants. So I've got those ready, and the polytunnels have been cleaned out, and we've started tidying the beds, and I'm actually in the middle of getting a third polytunnel built, so looking forward to having all of that set up. But there's something about just being that, that really like simple,
physical
honest work.
Physical work.
Yeah, that Absolutely. Is just like, it's just so zen for me.
Yeah. I'm lucky enough to have a share of an allotment as well, and it's just it's amazing for your brain to like do a bit of physical work.
Yeah.
And the satisfaction. It's like mowing a lawn. You can see what you've done. You can see what you've got to do. And when it's finished, it's finished. And an allotment is never finished. There's always more to do, and isn't that just life? But it has like once you've done what you're going to do that day, you probably don't have to take it home. You're not thinking about it. You're like, I've done that, and I've done that fine, and that was it. So,
and you feel like it's rewarding, like you've done a good job, and things look nice and tidy, and all your stuff's watered and everything. And then like it all comes to fruition when you've got flowers forming, and then there's fruits coming, and then there's veg, and when you're eating a dinner made with your own stuff, it's just it's great.
It's good. It's like building miniatures. And then you come back to them in 2 months and somebody's painted them for you.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Exactly. Good analogy.
Just bringing it back to,
What about you?
Well, it is gaming. So like for the longest time, I haven't had a PC that had a graphics card that could run anything. And I've wanted to play Warhammer Total War since it came out. But just, like there's limited time to do all of these things. So... but anyway, I hit up Facebook Marketplace and bought like an aging dog of a PC, but it will run first Warhammer Total War at ultra everything across the board. So,
nice.
But yeah, it's I've had a lovely time, just a lovely time playing some Warhammer Total War. It's great. It's like
it's so thematic and stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
It's really when beastmen turn up and start spoiling your day, it's really a pain in the bum. And I'm sort of like going the Empire and trying to obviously doing the thing, expanding out all the rest of it, deciding who is going to be okay and who's going to get the thumbs down and I'm going to go after. But it's just interesting. Like I don't play a huge amount of video games, and covers a bit of that thing you were talking about, like hobby progress and stuff as well. But like I was for the first couple of weeks of having like a machine that could run a decent computer game, I did no painting like whatsoever. And then enjoyed getting back into some painting afterwards and stuff. But I guess, I don't know, it's nice to have, it's engaging in the same sort of worlds, but like not doing it in the same way. I don't know. I don't have that feeling of satisfaction having like gone out and conquered some territory in Warhammer Total War that I do with painting stuff. But it's still it's just another way of enjoying a part of the hobby, right?
And one of the things that I really like about, especially when you're playing a game based on the miniatures game that you love, is that it adds breathes a little bit of life into it as well, doesn't it? You know, they've got great voice actors, and like when there's like when you're playing as, like, say, the Skaven or whatever, or you know, and you've got the assassins that are going to do bits and bobs and blah blah blah, and when you're playing as the Empire and you're having these sort of minor disputes with other Empire regions, and you know, then you've got to think about
all the accents,
the Revenant, the Revenant hordes from the north, and then you know, you've got the insidious vampire coming in from the other side, and it's got that sense of peril that you've got from Warhammer, and this world that's just at war all the time, and everybody's out to get each other, and you know, for the common man, it's probably not a very good place.
Probably not, but yeah, it's a good place for me. It's been loads of fun, and so yeah, more of that, I think.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that'll probably just about do it, I reckon.
I think that's it for today. Yeah,
a bit of a wild and varied episode there for you.
Yeah,
some highs and lows.
Yeah,
but next episode, I think maybe probably a good idea to like focus it in on some hobby stuff.
Yeah,
and to talk about some, you know, motivation and ways of getting in and out of motivation, and becoming motivated to do painting, and you know, expand out on some of those some of the stuff that you were talking about. I think would be a good idea.
Definitely.
So that'll be in about a month's time. Look forward to doing that and chatting about that. But yeah, that'll do it for today. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you, Lee.
All right. We'll see you again next time.
Take it easy.
Cheers, everyone. For